The Blackout Generation. You know, it's funny, since the blackout, I've actually started enjoying the evenings more. I never really saw my family much before. We'd have dinner together and then go our separate ways for the rest of the day. But we discovered the chemistry we hadn't really credited. We gather round the scented candles on the coffee table and play games until bed. Or read. Reading's good. It feels a more natural pursuit under the condition of silence. One night, we painted. Sales of paint have increased 3,000% since the blackout started. So they say. There's something primordial about it. The faint yellow lights flicker across our faces and draw the painted figures into rudimentary movements like the cave art of old. We're lucky to have each other. There's a lady across the street, just her and her baby. She spends the nights in an improvised soundproof cell made of mattresses and blankets. Soundproofing material sold out within hours. Everyone realised they'd need it, and supply was nowhere near the demand. In a few months, so they say, there'll be a lot more people in a similar situation. There's a family down the road looking after an old lady who doesn't understand. She cries out in the night when the sirens start blaring, and they have to cover her mouth with tape to silence her. Imagine doing that to someone you love. I've heard of people left out on the street to die. Cruelty by necessity, to keep the tribe alive. Every morning as the sun rises and the streetlights are switched off, they send out the volunteers to do what they can for the poor souls that didn't make it home. 9 times out of 10, there's not enough left of them to identify. Hundreds every afternoon on the news, and those are just the ones they find. How many more are out there in the wastelands waiting to be discovered? How many were taken without leaving a trace behind? To start with, there were thousands of deaths per night. That didn't last long though. People learned pretty quick that nowhere is safe. Some made rafts and sailed out to the Hebrides. Others built makeshift defences around their homes. Others tried to escape to the continent, only to find queues tailing back 100 miles, and the borders already closed. Many tried their luck, or trusted their muscles, knives, or guns. Very few survived. I don't pity those stupid enough to risk it. They know by now what their chances are. But they're the protagonists of their own movies, and no screenplay ends with the hero being torn limb from limb. I don't pity the soldiers with their tanks and their body armour, who knew the risks and heeded the warnings, and followed the orders that led us here. I do pity the homeless, afraid, alone and cold. Many mustn't have heard the news before it was too late. No one thought to take them in. The state never bothered to help. I pity the widows and the orphans, their family picked off one by one. I pity the neighbours who wake up early to hose the blood from the street so that the children don't have to see it on their way to school. I pity those that live in blocks of flats, whose safety lies at the discretion of their neighbours. I pity the mother who found a severed arm in the pivot hedge 50 yards from her son's front door, with tattoos the only indication of its owner. And most of all, I pity the poor souls who spend their nights away from home, working to keep a roof over their families' heads. And when they fail to come home after a shift, they realise there's no mother or father, no income, no home. They're out knocking on the doors, begging their neighbours for pity and charity, and so many haven't the money or food or space to accommodate them. Many find shelter eventually, but some don't. I saw them, a family of 5, banning on every gate in the upmarket side of town. Surely there are spare bedrooms in there. Surely there's space for grieving children, even if it's only one. I hope they found safety eventually. We'd have taken them. We don't have a penny to spare as it is, especially as we're down to only one income. We've been lucky. No one's died, but Mum lost her job at the pub. Everything was cut back to the barest necessities long ago. And supply problems aside, what pub is going to survive if it has to close at 5 p.m? I lie awake at night listening to the intensity of the silence, focusing on any noise I hear and whether it might be a threat. One night I heard footsteps and held my breath. I tiptoe around the creaky floorboards on my way to the bathroom. In my state of slumber, the hazard tape over the flush button reminds me not to press it. I hear my dad's faint snoring next door and hope that the blankets and double glazing are enough to block it from the outside world. I hope I don't snore. I hope no one hears us. I hope we didn't leave a chink in the armour. We triple check everything before sunset. But still, there's a voice in my head nagging at me. What if you made a mistake? I hope they don't target us. If everyone follows the rules as closely as us, and they will do sooner or later, then they'll start targeting random houses. One thing's for sure, they won't stop killing just because everyone's playing the game. And that's my worst fear, that the choice will be taken away. Some nights I lie there thinking, what if I just walked out there and got it over with? What if I seized control and go out with some semblance of dignity intact? But then I think of the glee on their faces before they tear me to shreds. The final thing I'd ever see. And I think of how I cower in fear, or try to protect myself. I think of the man over the road, hosing my blood down the drain before the school run. I think of my parents when it's all over, sat downstairs in silence, street light flooding in through the open curtains.